Welcome to the Rediscovery channel. This is the channel where every week I, Ivor Kovac, and my good friend Stilgar take turns coming up with a topic from history that the other person doesn't know about and probably hasn't heard about either. So today is my turn, and I'm going to ask Stilgar, have you heard of Alboin?
Alboin? Sorry?
Yeah, Alboin.
Oh, it sounds very familiar.
What if I say Alboin of Italy?
And now it sounds even more familiar, but I still can't place it. Tell me more.
Okay, so Alboin was born in 530 AD, supposedly. We don't have an exact date. And he ruled over the Lombards from 560 to 572. And his name actually means elf friend if you translate it into modern English. And in Old English, it would be Aelfwine.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But this guy was a real guy, and his name really did mean elf friend. So you know who the Lombards are, right?
Yes. Yeah, they're the people that took over Italy. Well, I guess the Roman Empire.
They took
After
over
it
Italy.
fell apart, right?
Well, they took over after the Ostrogoths took over.
Okay. Okay. All right.
And they came in after Justinian was gone. So the Byzantines were kind of looking elsewhere. But what I'm going to do is, while I was doing my research, I came across an origin myth for the Lombards. So I want to say something about them briefly first before getting into Alboin specifically. So the name Lombards, it means long beards, and they're also referred to as Langobards. So these guys are a Germanic tribe, or they were, and they started out in Scandinavia, which was the heartland of all Germanic peoples, like southern Scandinavia and the area that today is called Denmark. So a lot of the history that we have, the early history about the Lombards, was written down by a guy named Paul the Deacon, who was a Benedictine monk that lived in Italy. And he wrote down this origin myth about the Lombards, and he said it was too silly to be true, but he included it in his history anyways. So, okay, so according to the myth, the ancestors of the Lombards were originally called Winili, and they were in a conflict with the Vandals. The Vandals told the Winili to submit and pay tribute to them or to prepare for war. So the Winili were led by these two brothers. Their names were Ivor and Aio, and they thought it was better to fight than to be subjected by these people, to be conquered. But the only problem is that the Winili were outnumbered by the Vandals quite significantly. So the brothers, they made an appeal to Odin. They prayed to Odin, but so did the Vandals. And both sides asked Odin to give them the victory over the other. And what Odin decided is that he would give the victory to whichever side he saw first at sunrise. So the mother of these two guys, her name was Gambara, and she decided to go to Frigga, who is Odin's wife, for help. And what Frigga told her is to have the women of the Winili take down their hair and arrange it around their faces so that it looks like beards, and have them stand out in the battle, the front lines with the men. And so they did that. And then the next day, when the sun came up, Odin saw them and he said, "Who are all these long beards?" And Frigga says, "Oh, well, now that you've given a name to their tribe, you should also give them the victory." So according to that, the myth, that's how they came to be called Lombards. And it's also how, I suppose, they avoided being subjugated by the Vandals. So, and of course, yeah, Paul the
Yeah,
Deacon
I don't
thought it
know.
was.
I feel like that could be possible. I
I
mean,
do. Yeah.
the long beard part, Anyway,
The long beard part, not the part about Odin and Frigga
no,
being real.
no. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that like would be a nice, cool way. like kind of Sun Tzu, the art of war kind of approach.
Yeah, to quickly, because depending on how much the Vandals outnumbered them by, it would quickly swell the ranks. And if you're looking at them from the other side of the battlefield, and suddenly they have like more men than you, like almost twice as many people, then the Vandals might be thinking, oh, the Lombards must have gotten help from some other tribe.
Yeah.
From a distance, they probably would have thought, well, have to be men.
Yeah.
So yeah, I also think that it could be true. And what happens is that there is the Lombards, they move south in a greater general Germanic migration, which is called the Wandering of Nations, and it's also called the Great Migration. And that ran from roughly 376 AD to 476. And the Lombards settled in Pannonia. And then after that point, Alboin's father, his name is Audoin, he becomes the king of the Lombards. So Alboin is the son of King Audoin and Queen Rodelinda. And in 552 AD, Audoin, he sends, number I've got is 5,500 men to help the Roman general Narses, who's fighting to drive the Ostrogoths out of Italy. So, and this is important because a lot of these Lombards that go and this time they fight on the side of the Romans, and a lot of them, they come back and they bring reports about what it's like in Italy back to their people. So the Lombards, they're involved with another Germanic tribe called the Gepids, and they're in conflict with them. And this is in this is in the area called Pannonia, which I suppose was the old Roman name for this province. So the Lombards are in conflict with the Gepids, and in 552, Alboin, he's not the king yet, but he's fighting in battles at a young age. He kills Turismod, who is the son of Thurisind, the king of the Gepids. So I believe he actually kills the crown prince. And according to my sources, Turismod was also the main general who had most of the plans and strategies was in his head. So after he's killed, the Gepids, they flee, they run away. And then what happens is Alboin, he wants to eat not just him, but the men. They think that Alboin, because of his great deed, he should be allowed to eat at his father's table. But according to the custom of the Lombards, he's not allowed to do it until he can present a set of armor that was given by a foreign king. He has to present it for the right to sit at his father's table. So at this point, what I want to do is read from a little bit of the history that Paul the Deacon wrote about Alboin. So let's see here. Okay, so the Langobards returned to their own abodes. When after the victory had been won, the Langobards returned to their own abodes, they suggested to their king Audoin that Alboin, by whose valor they had won the victory in the fight, should become his table companion, so that he who had been a comrade to his father in danger should also be a comrade at the feast. Audoin answered them that he could by no means do this, lest he should break the usage of the nation. You know, he said, that it is not the custom among us that the son of the king should eat with his father, unless he first receives his arms from the king of a foreign nation. Let's see. When he heard these things from his father, Alboin, taking only 40 young men with him, journeyed to Turisind, king of the Gepidae, with whom he had before waged war, and intimated the cause in which he had come. And the king, receiving him gladly, invited him to his table. and placed him on his right hand, where Turismod, his former son, had been wont to sit. In the meantime, while the various dishes were made ready, Turisind, reflecting that his son had sat there only a little while before, and recalling to mind the death of his child, and beholding his slayer present and sitting in his place, drawing deep sighs, could not contain himself, but at last his grief broke forth in utterance. This place, he says, is dear to me, but the person who sits in it is grievous enough to my sight. Then another son of the king who was present, aroused by his father's speech, began to provoke the Langobards with insults, declaring, because they wore white bandages from their calves down, that they were like mares with white feet up to the legs, saying, the mares that you take the mares that you take after have white fetlocks. I don't even know what that means, but
Okay. Yeah.
yeah. So, anyways,
That's
then one of
that's a harsh insult right there. Yeah.
it might have been, like in your in your country, typhus is vulgarism, right?
Yeah.
But here, people would be like, "Huh? What does that mean?" So it could have been something incredibly vulgar and offensive in their language. But at any rate, their language, by the way, I believe it was Suebic. It was descended from the original Germanic language. I think the Lombard language, which I've seen written as Lombardic, called Lombardic. It comes from an older Germanic language called Suebic.
How do you
I think that's
spell
the
that?
case. Suebic.
Okay.
I think that's what it is. I'll if I'm wrong, I'll correct it in the slideshow. But anyways, okay. So here, then one of the Langobards thus answered these kings: "Go to the field of Asfeld, and there you can find by experience beyond a doubt how stoutly those you call mares succeeded in kicking. There the bones of your brother are scattered in the midst of the meadows like those of a vile beast." When they heard these things, the Gepidae, unable to bear the tumult of their passions, are violently stirred in anger and strive to avenge the open insult. The Langobards, on the other side, ready for the fray, all lay their hands on the hilts of their swords. The king, leaping forth from the table, thrust himself into their midst and restrained his people from anger and strife, threatening first to punish him who first engaged in fight, saying that it is a victory not pleasing to God when anyone kills his guest in his house. Thus, at last, the quarrel having been allayed, they now finished the banquet with joyful spirits, and Turisend, taking up the arms of Turismod, his son, delivered them to Alboin and sent him back in peace and safety to his father's kingdom. So I've been looking at I've looked at a lot of images, to try and find out what kind of gear the Lombards wore, and
Yeah.
I didn't see anything of them like wrapping their lower bodies. A lot of the world's oldest Indo-European cultures, whether they're from Scandinavia or the Russian steppes, or even as far east as the Tocharians, like in China, and the Persians and the Slavs, a lot of these people, they had this same kind of basic outfit of like somewhat baggy pants that quite often would tuck into boots, and then like a shirt that came down and covered the top part of their pants. I think it probably has something to do with how our ancestors made use of horses, and it's more efficient for riding than say like a toga would be.
Mhm.
Um, or some of the more. But my guess is maybe that this wraps were there to kind of keep their pants on, and maybe to keep them from flapping in the wind. Or it doesn't seem likely that they would have had wraps in place of pants. But anyways,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
and probably when he says it's displeasing to God, he means like Odin, because these are actually for the most part pre-Christian societies at this point. Um, so they make a peace temporarily, and Alboin takes this guy's. He killed this man's son in battle, not his only son, but he gets the armor from the guy that he killed, and so he considered his father's table, and he leaves on, I guess, good terms considering what has transpired between them. But it doesn't really stick. Like, there is pretty much perennial conflict between the Lombards and the Gepids. So let's see. What happens is, again, like the war continues, and this time Alboin, he kills. Okay, I missed something here. I forgot to mention. So in 560, Alboin actually marries his first wife. Her name is Clothsind, and she's the daughter of the Frankish king called Clothar. His name is Clothar, and this is important because previously the Lombards had been more aligned with the Byzantines, but by marrying Clothsind, he's aligning away from them because the Franks were enemies of the Byzantines. And then in the meantime, Cunimund becomes king of the Gepids, and he's another son of Thurisind. He's, I guess, a younger son. So after Alboin becomes king, he decides to deal permanently with the Gepids because it's a continuing struggle with them. And what he does is he makes a treaty with Bayan I, or Bayan I, who is the king of the Avars. And the Avars were an Asiatic group that had invaded into Europe after the Huns. So this is a group that comes later, but they're also another Asiatic group. These guys might actually be the forerunners of the Hungarians, the Magyars, but I'm not sure. But I think so, but I'm not sure. So Alboin makes a treaty with Bayan, and in the treaty, he says, like, after the fighting is all over, then the Avars have the right to possess all of the territory which formerly belonged to the Gepids. So they team up, and together they defeat the Gepids, and Alboin has to let them possess all the territory. So now the Lombards have these guys for neighbors. And during the battle with the Gepids, Alboin kills Cunimund. So he cuts his head off in battle. And then what he does is he turns his skull into a drinking goblet. And other sources, some other sources, what they say is that Bayan is actually the one who kills Cunimund, but then he gives the head to Alboin as a gift. But either way, what ends up happening is he keeps Cunimund's head and wears it attached to his belt, like hanging from his utility belt, I guess. And it's a skull hanging from his belt. Whenever he wants to get drunk and have some wine, he drinks from the severed head, the skull. I guess, I guess he turned it upside down, I would think, and probably the bottom jaw is removed. I don't know how they must have plugged up the eye sockets, but then at some point in
Conan
time,
the Barbarian.
Well,
I feel like that's in a movie. Yeah.
Well, Conan the Barbarian is inspired by these Germanic cultures, and also by the older myths about Hyperborea. Like you see in, I didn't read the comics, but like in the movies, you notice that they travel a little bit this way, and then they're meeting up with Asiatic populations, and that's because they're going over the Arctic. I'm pretty sure it's not as far distant. Any rate, yes, these Germanic cultures, they used to do that with the heads of their enemies, and so to make matters worse, I guess, Alboin, he marries Rosamund. His first wife dies. I didn't find out why she died, or when, or how, but basically she doesn't live very long. And so after defeating the Gepids, Alboin marries Rosamund, who is the daughter of Cunimund, the king of the Gepids that he killed. And his reason for doing it is to make the Gepids, the survivors of the Gepids, loyal to him. But what happens is he doesn't like being next to the Avars, and so he decides to move his people south into Italy. And one of the reasons that this is an enticing proposition is because some of the men that his father sent to help the Byzantines previously have come back, and they've said it's a rich place and a good place. So Alboin decides to go there, and there was a treaty, another aspect of the treaty with Bayonne that said that if they don't like it, then the Lombards can come back and take back their own territories. Of course, they never actually do this, and I don't know necessarily that the Avars would have allowed them to do it, but that's the agreement that they had. So in 568, he takes his people along with a few other Germanic groups, and he goes down into Italy. And the conquest of Italy happens from 569 to 572. And at this point, the Ostrogoths are no longer really a factor. And in fact, the Romans or the Byzantines have assumed control over Italy again completely. But for whatever reason, they are not really paying much attention to their northern frontier. So Alboin is able to take all sorts of territory without them even putting up a fight. And the only serious resistance he has is a city called Pavia, which takes him 3 years to conquer. And while he's doing this, he makes Verona his capital. And so his wife is not too happy with him because in addition to killing her father, he's got her father's head hanging from his belt wherever he goes. And
Yeah.
he's drinking from it.
Yeah.
So, and here's something else from Paul the Deacon. What he says is, oh, wait, no, before we get to let me read this part. Yeah, this is from Paul
I feel
the
like
Deacon.
he's exaggerating. Come on,
Yeah.
different times, right? Different customs.
Yes, he should just accept it, right?
Yeah, seriously.
It's a privilege to be married to the great beard.
Yeah.
So actually, well, yeah. So in 572, she decides to kill Alboin, and here's what Paul the Deacon says. He says,
Did he poison him?
"No, you'll
Oh.
see. It's
Okay, all right.
poison is poison. Yeah, she. So when he, that means Alboin, was more flown with wine than was appropriate at a feast in Verona, he asked that wine be given to the queen to drink in the cup which he had made from the head of his father-in-law, Cunimundus. He invited her to drink happily with her father. Therefore, when Rose, it's so outrageous. It's like
that's pretty sick, dude.
That's like it's like when it's one of those things that seems like a good idea when you're drunk, but when you're sober,
yeah, I remember one time I went drinking and I was like, "Here, woman." No, never. I mean, that's sick, man. Like, I don't know, but I mean, yeah.
So it says, I
guess they were barbarians after all, barbary, right? So yeah.
Our term barbarian, well, actually, our term barbarian comes from the Greeks, making fun of people who don't speak Greek. But I mean, in the past, there's a reason why some groups were referred to as barbarians. There's another reason why some groups were referred to as savages. When you look at this stuff, you can't just say, "Oh, people in the past were more bigoted." They really weren't. It's just that they were dealing with stuff that the average person today doesn't have to deal with. Anyways, so he says, therefore, when Rosamund found out about the matter, she conceived a deep pain in her heart. that she was unable to quell. She burned to avenge the death of her father on her husband. He actually killed her, one of her uncles too, right? So Rosamund decides to kill Alboin at this point. Probably she wasn't happy at any point with him, but this is like the last straw. So
Yeah, he also, you know what the last straw was?
what's that?
Was that he also snored in his sleep. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What? You don't like my healthy coif woman? Be gone. Find another bedchamber. And
Yeah. So how
actually,
did he
that's
kill him? Sorry, I keep throwing you off. How did she kill him? Did she stab him, or I imagine?
no. She got other men. She used her womanly attributes to have him killed. So
Ah,
so she slept with she got with his brother-in-law. Sorry, his Helmichis. Oh no, not brother-in-law, foster brother. Guy named Helmichis, and convinced him to assassinate Alboin. But just to get some extra, just to make sure that it was done, she disguises herself as a servant and sleeps with another guy whose name is Perideo, and this guy was actually a bodyguard for Alboin. So she sleeps with this dude. She dresses herself up as like a servant and sleeps with this dude. And then later on, she tells him who she actually is and says, "Oh, by the way, you committed adultery." And so when he finds out about that, she says, you got to help with the deed. I mean, that's not her exact words, but she says she gets him to help in exchange for, I guess, not telling everybody what he did.
oh, it's like blackmail. Okay.
Yeah, blackmails him. And so she has Perideo, and I've seen, like, it's not certain. Either the sword is removed from his bedchamber altogether, or it's tied down to his bed. So she gets Perideo to tie his sword down or remove it, and then Helmichis and Perideo both go into his room when he's not expecting them, and they attack him. And he actually fights them off with a footstool for a while, but then he still gets killed because these guys are armed and he's not. And there's two of them and one of him.
Mm-hmm.
So after that, Helmichis and Rosamund and Perideo, they all run away. They go to Ravenna, which at this time is still controlled by the Byzantines, and they loot the royal treasury, the Lombard treasury, and they take it with them. And Helmichis marries Rosamund and declares himself to be the king of the Lombards, but they reject him, the Lombards do, and they appoint Clef to be the king instead. I believe that Clef was actually Alboin's nephew. So Rosamund, she decides she doesn't like Helmichis either, and decides to poison him. And Helmichis, he suspects it, so like she serves him poisoned wine to have him drink, and then he makes her drink it too, like from the same cup, because he suspects her, and then they both die from it.
I wonder what kind of poison they would have used.
Yeah.
Or arsenic, I guess, right? Because that's been around. Something like that. Okay.
Arsenic, I think arsenic is actually just an element by itself, right? It's one of the actual elements of the periodic table, isn't it? It's a metal. I think.
Oh yeah. What's the poison that you can make from almonds? Or it smells like almonds?
I think arsenic it is toxic. People did use it to poison people, but I'm pretty sure it's also an actual element. It's not a mixture of something.
Okay. All right. Oh,
But
I'm thinking, yeah, cyanide is what I was thinking of. And cyanide, I think, is a natural. I think you can get it from natural sources. I think it's like in an apple. The pits in an apple, I think they have like very small traces of cyanide in them. So
the pits of peach, I think, might be also, or
okay, yeah, so
apricot.
maybe they would use something like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Okay, so they
So
both died.
they both died. Yeah, and the Lombards, they actually, I don't remember what happened with Clef. I mean, I didn't think it was that important, but basically, the Lombards, something happens with Clef, and then they have no king for a while, and then later on they have a few kings, and then ultimately I believe it's the Franks that come and take them out. But today you have
Sorry, I
like
gotta go back. So her husband, the guy that she slept with to kill her previous husband, what was his name? Theonide or Theo? Was
um
his
see okay, so
Theodosius?
Rosamund,
Was that
no,
Rosamund? Yeah.
she sleeps with Helmetius, who is
Helmetius, yes. So Helmetius suspects that the wine has been poisoned, and then he makes her.
Helmetius. Yeah, he
Yeah,
makes her drink it too.
but why wouldn't she be like, no, 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 you go ahead,
Probably
it's all
because then
you.
she would have. So
Yeah,
good,
okay,
good
sorry.
question. No,
Yeah, that's just like, all right, I guess I'll drink it, because if she like, yeah, I guess if she said no, then maybe he would have killed her. But then if
probably.
she drinks it, she would die as well. Anyway, okay,
He
sorry.
probably drank it. Here's what I think. I think he decided to kill Helmetius. Like, here, drink this. I got you. I poured you some wine. And then Helmetius is probably thinking, why is she pouring me wine after this big argument that we had? This is weird. And he says, hey, drink it. Drink. Why don't you drink this wine with me? And she's probably like, oh crap, I don't want to drink this wine. I'm gonna die. And he notices her hesitating, and then he's like, oh, so you're trying to poison me? No, I'm not, I'll show you. And then she drinks it. She probably decided that, and then after that he's like, well, I guess the wine's okay, and then he drinks it and they both die. And I'm thinking she probably wanted to kill him so bad that
Yeah.
she was willing to also die in the process, because if she had just been like, I'm not going to drink this wine, then
It would
he would.
have to be. I mean, because he sounded pretty smart before with all these, plots and schemes and everything. So, anyway, okay. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm guessing it is. And also, since they shift over to the Byzantines, where Germanic people would be fewer, and she doesn't have the same kind of connections, it would have probably been harder for her to find allies to kill Helmetius.
Yeah.
And she didn't have as much to bribe people with. And I believe that the Byzantines, they supported this coup, supposedly. At least that's what the articles I was reading, they were saying, that it looks like the Byzantines were in favor of dealing with Alboin. And so, yeah, she probably had fewer options to deal with him there. And he was a little smarter than Alboin. I mean, like, provoking your wife, like, the thing is, I was thinking about it, like, if your wife decided to kill you, it would be, she would have the easiest time of it of anybody else, because, like, if it's a knockdown, drag out fight, like, they're not going to be able to beat you up. But, like, all your wife has to do is be like, oh, here, I cooked you breakfast, eat your breakfast, and you're going to eat it. So, like, there's so many chances, like, that your wife could take you out. So it seems kind of interesting that Alboin was so cavalier and drinking from the skull and everything in front of her. And that, why would you? I know that, like, a lot of cultures, they would marry somebody from another tribe or another nation in order for there to be peace or to consolidate the dynasties. But I mean, he killed two of her blood relatives. You'd think that it would be dangerous to marry somebody like that and bring that person into your house.
Yeah,
Like,
but
I
then
would.
I mean, people would take slaves into their house. They would like wipe out other tribes and take all the women.
Yeah, but
And
you can control a slave better than you can
oh,
control, like,
but they would also take them as wives sometimes. So you know, like that's also dangerous.
that it. Right, and every society that's had slavery has also had slave revolts.
Yeah,
Like in Haiti, they did a full ethnic cleansing, and they
yeah,
killed everybody, even like all the French people, even the people that didn't really have anything to do with slavery. They're just like, no more of you guys. And
yeah.
so, um, yeah, but actually,
All right, but yeah,
the
I'm guessing it was more common back then, or yeah. Anyway, who knows? But it's a good question. Yeah, well, or maybe he had a death wish somehow. Who knows? trying to tempt fates. Yet
It's a
seen too much.
different mentality that that I definitely have a hard time understanding. Like,
People were pretty
I mean,
like cruel back then anyway, because in order to survive, like you kind of had to be pretty tough, I imagine.
but you'd think like, hey, sir, woman, we're having serve me. Well, I guess servants would serve breakfast, but it's like he's going to be like walking around in front of her with this skull dangling from his belt, and he's like, I need a drink. I want my wife to pour me a drink. Here, give me some. And he's like,
Probably got
oh
a
my
trip
God.
out of or kick out of humiliating her like that. That's my psychoanalysis.
Probably so. And she killed him for it. I mean, he's probably thinking, no woman's gonna beat me up. I killed her brothers. I can handle her. But the woman doesn't. If she wants to kill you, she's not gonna like do it in such a way that it's a fair fight where you'd be like fighting with fists or swords. She's just gonna make an arrangement and have it done. And that's what she did. And then after that, of course, like her effectiveness, like after going to Ravenna, that was kind of the end of it. Like I don't know what she would have done after that, because at least with the Lombards, there were also Gepids among them, but among the Byzantines, it's like maybe she did have like some general Byzantine like mayor or something that she was going to shift over towards. It must have been very attractive to be able to do all this and get all these guys to kill for her.
I'm guessing, probably, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's another reason for being what do you call it? I can't think of the word. Not sleeping around, not being a Tinder whore. Sorry, that's
She
not.
actually did sleep around though. That's how she got these guys.
I know, but yeah, that's like I mean, that supports the idea of like having a society where people don't do that and they're loyal. So anyway.
Well, she didn't just sleep. I guess the difference between her and like one of those whores is that she didn't just sleep around for nothing. Like the guys that she slept with, they owed her a favor now, and
Yeah,
it was such like that
they should have,
Paradeo guy.
like the guy that was married, the bodyguard should have been like, "No, I'm married,"
No, she
So,
was married. She was married. I
yeah.
don't think the bodyguard was married, but he lay with her, and then
Oh,
she could say, you're an adulterer. You slept with the king's wife,
yeah.
and
I get it. Yeah.
yeah, his only way out that he could think of was probably to just go along with what she said. Like, don't worry, if you help me kill him, everything will be fine. And I think everything was fine for Paradeo. He probably ended up being like he probably joined like the Byzantines or something as an auxiliary, or found some kind of manual labor job. Um, I'm not really sure, but yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, he got away with them, and so. There's the first place I actually heard about Alboin was in one of Tolkien's books, the expanded lore.
Hmm.
Like, he appears in the book called The Lost Tales, which is I think book 5 of the series called The Histories of Middle Earth, which is all the unfinished works where Christopher Tolkien attempts to put them in order based on when he thought his father wrote them, and which ideas took precedence over the other. So there was a time years ago where Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, they like one guy was going to write a sci-fi. One was supposed to write about space travel. The other was supposed to write about time travel. And so C.S. Lewis, he wrote Out of the Silent Planet, and he finished it. And then he wrote 2 sequels to it, which I have. And the first 2 books in that series I really liked. The third one I didn't. But then Tolkien, he started writing this thing called the Lost Road, which was in the same lore that would later be developed into the Silmarillion. So first there was the Lost Tales, which is the oldest version of the lore that got made into the Silmarillion, and then he wrote the Lost Tales. Sorry, the Lost Road, and in the Lost Road, it starts with a father and son in his time, like what was modern England back then. So like between World War I and World War II, and basically the father and son, they go back in the past through their ancestors. So like they each would live out a certain set of events from guys that they were descended from, and the connection is one of the guys, like the son, was always referred to as elf friend, like his name was always elf friend. So he put this at one point, the son was going to relive the life of Alboin, and the father was going to relive Audoin, and then they were going to go back further in time and further in time, and eventually they would go back to Numenor, where they would be among the faithful that resisted Sauron. So I don't know, like he never finished writing this book, and I don't know how much of the ideas are still valid and can be considered part of the the world history. I think that when he wrote Lord of the Rings, it pretty much destroyed all these ideas. But Aelfwine, he still did kind of exist in the current lore up until Tolkien died. So yeah, but it kind of reads like the story of Alboin, and where he goes to the Gepids, and the way that Paul the Deacon writes, it kind of does blend pretty well with Tolkien's style. It does to me. It sounds like something that would be in one of his books. So I thought that was cool. And then like Aelfwine, that gets the lore. He's an English sailor that receives the lore of the Silmarillion, is further back in time than Alboin would be, whose name also meant elf friend. So it's kind of, and you have to bear in mind, like in America, like we said I mentioned it in your video, where a lot of people, they have this idea of like something short that wears green. Like if you say elf, they think of like Santa's elves. But the elves that of Germanic mythology were human-sized, and they came from the realm of Alfheim, which was one of the worlds of the World Tree, and Midgard, was the middle, like Earth was the middle of all the worlds in the World Tree, hence the term Middle Earth, actually. So it makes sense that some people would have names like Elfriend if they really thought that they were elves. Maybe they name him that because they're trying to make his name auspicious or something like that in order to bless him in his life. But of course, he decided to be an idiot and hang his father-in-law's head from his belt and drink it out of it in front of his wife. So,
yeah.
And here's what I forgot to read earlier. So that Paul the Deacon, he describes how life is during Alboin's reign. So he says, there was this wonderful kingdom of the Lombards. There was no violence, no plotting pitfalls, and no others unjustly oppressed. No one plundered, and there were no thefts. There was no robbery. Everyone went wherever they wanted, safe and without any fear. So this is probably another reason why Tolkien worked this, or attempted to work this into his lore, like started but never finished, because he had other stuff like Germanic Golden Ages that he was looking into, and this account, it seems like it might be kind of a little too flattering, but according to some of the different sources I looked at, what they said is that inside of the realm that Alboin ruled directly, there really was a stop put on the plundering and the violence. But outside of his realm, where there were other Germanic tribes going around, things were pretty bad with those people coming through the area, killing and stealing. So it makes sense that nobody's going to act up inside of Alboin's realm, but of course there's problems along the edges of it. So it's kind of like a small, if true, it's kind of like a small Germanic golden age. And then there was another Germanic golden age, which the legend of King Sheaf, which Tolkien also tried to incorporate into his lore. And of course, I did a video on this on my own channel. And that's the legend of King Sheaf, which maybe we want to look into later, just to see like how much of that legend is is really around. But anyway, that's all I have.
Yeah, it's a cool story. Yeah,
And
so interesting dude, and he came from so they came from the river Elbe, the Elbe River, right? So and then they are the ones that settled in northern Italy, and I guess afterwards they kind of fell apart or they splintered apart because there was no more main leader.
they got conquered by the Franks later.
Yeah, but they had a lasting impact on northern Italy because now it's ruled, or there's still Germanic people there. I was wondering about the religion of this guy.
Pagan, probably
so
worshipped Odin.
So according to Wikipedia, he his religion was Arianism.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I didn't really want to use Wikipedia as a source. It
Yeah.
could be that I did see at some point he said he was an Arian Christian, which of course that's a heresy. I wouldn't consider those people Christians. He was raised pagan, though, that's for sure. And he may have claimed himself as this in order to kind of ally more closely with the more advanced parts of Europe, maybe to show the Byzantines or the Franks that he wasn't a complete barbarian. Of course, he was a pretty complete barbarian, but I don't know. It may be like I don't know. It's hard to say. And a lot as I was reading through a lot of this stuff, people, this different sources that I looked at, some would say, "Oh, according to some sources, this," and or it may be like that. Like there's whole points of a lot of areas where there's uncertainty, and there's mention of his exploits, and there was, I guess, a song or a poem or something written about him and his heroic exploits, which I couldn't find anything other than him killing the Gepid princes.
His successes in battle were celebrated in Saxon and Bavarian epic poetry, which is interesting.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see that. And that's probably another reason why Tolkien tried to work this stuff into his lore is, and again, I don't know if it still stands, but one of the things that Tolkien said is he likes stories that are ancient and on the border between myth and history. And this story definitely qualifies as that because of all the uncertainty around it at different points. And this guy being turned into kind of an epic figure. So
yeah, he had to cross the Alps, which at that point in time was no small endeavor. Yeah. Indeed.
Maybe they stepped on the Iceman on their way over too.
Yeah. Walked over Ötzi, which is one of the previous episodes. Yeah. Yeah. Cool, man. No, cool. I learned something. I was thinking you said Albion, which, it's another word for England, is it not? I believe.
Albion. I think Albion. This guy is Alboin.
Yeah. You got confused. Yeah.
I got confused as well. Like in some of the older Lost Tales and some of the older histories of the Middle Earth, England was supposed to be a big part, and they used that name Albion. So I saw both Albion and Alboin. I conflated them. When I first read it, I'm like, well, I guess it's the same thing, but really it's not.
No.
And Albion refers to the big whole, the bigger island, and then Ireland is the smaller one.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, really? What's the name of is Ireland the name of the smaller island?
Well, I don't know what the ancient Anglo Saxons would have called the smaller. Okay. I think good question. I don't know. I just call it Ireland because.
Yeah. There's also I think there's an online multiplayer game called Albion Online, I believe, something like that. Anyway, it's just I think a medieval kind of MMORPG. I think, yeah. Anyway, Cool. Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks, Ivor. Thanks for this story. Learned something new today. So thanks for surprising me. Yeah. Cool dude.
Great.
Although pretty weird if the whole thing with the skull was true.
That is true. Of that, there's no debate. He did.
Really?
That's
Okay.
well recorded. The thing that's not certain is whether it was he that killed Cunimund or whether it was Bayan the First. I suspect it was probably Alboin that did it himself, and that is probably and my guess is that Cunimund put up a good fight, and that's probably why he decided to keep this guy's head as like a personal trophy, and drink from it. You know, the idea that Bayan did it is probably just the Avars trying to take credit. You know, kind of like there's two sides to a lot of things in history. Like this side says one thing and the other side says another. Like with Shivaji, did Shivaji hit first or did Abdul Khan? You know, did Han Solo shoot first or did Greedo? No, but Greedo, whatever his name is.
Okay.
You heard about that controversy, right?
No.
Well, that's I won't waste time with it then.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not
All
a big
right,
of a
sorry.
Star Wars fan. So
No, I never took Star Wars seriously until I had kids. It's fun fantasy, but it's not sci-fi. So I was kind of snubbed at it, but it's actually
it's
not too.
not. Yeah, it's great if you're a kid. It's on. It's definitely for the
cute
level of kids.
entertainment. It's like dwarves and elves, I guess, but in space. We're probably upsetting a lot of people here.
No, I don't
But
think that's a good comparison because there's cultural development behind dwarves and elves.
yeah,
There's
that's
not
true.
any cultural development behind the aliens in Star Wars. They're just window
It's
dressing.
like a cutesy Disneyland version. Yeah, but yeah. Anyway, and actually, the Byzantine Lombard Wars happened not too long after Alboin died. I think actually only a couple of years after. Or maybe actually in the final years of his life, which was around Rome. I think they tried to reconquer Rome. And they took it, and then they lost it, and then they took it again, and then they lost it again. They spent so many resources on it that it really depleted. It was another way that the Byzantines, like, and there really was no reason for them to be there other than for the symbolic value of Rome.
Yeah.
But it cost them a ton of resources, and it severely weakened the Byzantine Empire, unfortunately. So.
They took Italy back under Justinian, and then the successor to Justinian, I think his name was Justin, didn't put a lot of priority on Italy, so the Lombards ate up a lot of it. That resistance, they actually, I'm pretty sure they did not take Rome, the Lombards. But of course, eventually what happens is the Franks, they come down, and then the Pope, he cuts a deal with, I think it was Charlemagne, right? And Charlemagne designates the papal
Charlemagne
states.
of the Franks. Yeah.
And so that actually gives the Catholic Church a huge breather because they no longer have barbarians trying to knock on their doors after Charlemagne takes over northern Italy and then designates them as papal states and don't mess with them. So that it's a huge break for them. But
yeah.
But yeah,
No,
I
it
don't think
was
the
it
Lombards.
was I think it was the last king of the Lombards that drove out the Byzantines from Italy. That took Rome. Desiderius, pretty sure.
He took Rome.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so. Yeah, and then the Franks came in under Charlemagne, the Great Charlemagne, which is another episode of ours. So look it up.
Charlemagne.
Yeah. Yeah, man. All right. Well, thanks for people still listening. We appreciate you. If you have any suggestions, please leave a comment. Let us know what you think of the video. We're we're taking listener suggestions. So, and we're quite likely to actually take up your story. So please let us know what you're interested in, and like, share, most important, subscribe. And other than that, Ivor, anything from your side?
No, I think that's good. Just do give us a comment, and if you like our videos, feel free to share them. That does help us. And yeah, other than that, I think that's good.
See you in the next one. All right.